My name is Renee, and before I tell you what happened in my house on the night of October the 4th, I need you to understand something. I am not a person who believes in ghosts. I did not believe in curses or fate or the idea that the past can crawl out of the ground and knock on your front door. I was a woman who paid her mortgage on time, who kept a color-coded calendar on the refrigerator, who trusted cameras and locks, and the number for the local police department taped inside a kitchen cabinet. I trusted systems. I trusted evidence. That is exactly why what the security footage showed me broke something in my mind that has never fully gone back together. It started, like most nightmares do, as something almost sweet. My daughter, Nora, was 4 months old. She had just started sleeping in longer stretches, 4 hours, sometimes 5, and my husband Daniel and I had begun to feel like actual human beings again, instead of two zombies trading a screaming infant back and forth in the dark. We had a nursery with a soft gray rug and a mobile of little cloth stars, and a camera clipped to the top of the crib that fed video straight to an app on my phone. We also had, because Daniel is the kind of man who reads reviews for 3 weeks before buying a toaster, a full exterior security system. 4 cameras: front door, back door, driveway, and one aimed at the side yard, which happened to also catch the nursery window from the outside. I am telling you about the cameras first because they are the reason I know I am not crazy. I want that on the record before I go any further. It began on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were trash nights, and I had gone to bed exhausted after dragging 2 bins to the curb in the dark, cursing the neighbor's motion light for not working, making a mental note to ask Daniel to fix it. I fell asleep around 11. And then, at 2:13 in the morning, Nora started to scream. Not cry. Scream. The kind of sound that yanks you out of unconsciousness so fast your body is standing before your mind catches up. Daniel and I collided in the hallway, both of us running for the nursery, both of us certain something was actually wrong, an emergency, a fall, choking. I turned on the light, and Nora was fine. Red-faced, furious, but fine. No fever, no obstruction, nothing pinching her, nothing tangled around her, no rash, no sign of pain. I picked her up and she calmed within a minute, tucked her face into my neck, and went back to sleep like nothing had happened at all. Daniel said it was probably a dream, or gas, or the 4-month sleep regression everyone online warns you about. I nodded, because that made sense, and I went back to bed. The next night, at 2:13 a.m., she did it again. I want you to sit with that number for a second, because I certainly did. Not sometime around 2. Not early morning. I checked my phone both nights, out of habit, the way you check the time when something jolts you awake. 2:13. Both nights. To the minute. I told myself it was a coincidence. Babies wake up in cycles. There's a science to it. Sleep architecture. Whatever. I looked it up. I read 4 articles about infant sleep cycles at 1 in the morning while Daniel snored beside me, and none of them explained why my daughter would wake up screaming at the exact same minute, 2 nights running, for no medical reason at all. The 3rd night, I decided to watch the nursery camera live instead of sleeping. I propped myself up against the headboard with my phone glowing in the dark, watching the small, green-tinted image of my daughter's crib, waiting. At 2:11, nothing. At 2:12, nothing. At 2:13, right on schedule, Nora's small body jerked, her arms flew up, and she began to scream. And on the screen, I watched it happen in real time, and there was nothing there. No shadow crossing the frame. No sound on the audio track except her own crying. The room was empty except for my baby, alone, screaming as if someone had just hurt her. I ran in anyway. I always ran in anyway. And every time, by the time I reached her, she was already calming down, as if whatever it was ended the moment I entered the room. By the end of that week, I had stopped sleeping properly at all. I was setting alarms for 2:05 just so I could be standing in the doorway before it happened, and every single night, whether I was standing right there or 3 rooms away, the exact same thing occurred at the exact same minute. I started to feel like I was losing my grip on something. Daniel, God love him, tried to be supportive, but I could see the doubt creeping into his face, the particular tired patience of a man who thinks his wife is spiraling from lack of sleep. He suggested I see someone. Not a joke, not cruel, just gentle. Maybe you should talk to your doctor, babe. New moms go through a lot. I remember feeling something crack open in my chest at that, because I knew what I was seeing, and I knew it wasn't in my head. And being told otherwise by the one person who was supposed to believe me was its own particular kind of lonely. So I stopped telling him the details. I started keeping my own private log instead. Dates, times, what I observed. The way you'd document evidence for a case you were building. Because somewhere underneath the fear, some old, buried instinct in me had started to whisper that this was not random. That someone, somewhere, was doing this on purpose. The turning point came on the 9th night. I had gone to bed early, bone-tired, and I'd forgotten to set my usual alarm. Nora's scream ripped me awake at what felt like the same cursed time, and I fumbled for my phone to check. 2:13, of course, and stumbled toward the nursery. But this time, halfway down the hall, I noticed something through the window at the end of the corridor, the one that overlooks the side yard. A shape, standing very still, close to the fence line, in the dark, facing the house. I froze. My whole body went cold in a way I can't fully describe to you even now. Whoever it was didn't move, didn't run. Just stood there, a darker shape against the darker night, watching. I didn't go check on Nora first. God forgive me, I didn't. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the side yard camera feed with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. And there, in grainy infrared, was a person standing exactly where I'd seen them, wearing a long coat, hood up, face angled toward the nursery window. Not moving, not doing anything except watching my daughter's window at 2:13 in the morning. By the time Daniel got up and we both ran to the window together, the figure was gone. We called the police. Of course we called the police. 2 officers came out, walked the property, found nothing. No footprints in the soft dirt by the fence, oddly, which one of them noted with a frown, since there should have been some disturbance in the mulch bed if someone had been standing there for any length of time. They took a report. They told us to keep our doors locked, to consider getting the motion light fixed, and left us with a case number and very little comfort. That night, I did not sleep at all. I sat up reviewing every second of footage from every camera we owned, going back over the entire 9 days. And that is when I found the truth that the police report did not capture, because the police only asked about that one night. I went further back. The figure had been there every single night, every single 2:13. On the first 2 nights, they had stood further back near the tree line, barely a shape at all, easy to mistake for a shadow or a trick of the infrared, which is exactly why no one, including me, had caught it sooner. But each night, the figure had crept a little closer. Night 1, near the fence, 40 feet from the house. Night 4, at the edge of the flower bed. Night 7, close enough that I could make out the pale oval of a face beneath the hood, though the resolution wasn't good enough to give me features. By night 9, they were close enough to touch the window. Someone had been coming to my house every single night for over a week, timing their arrival to the exact minute my daughter would wake up screaming. And I understood then, with a sick lurch in my stomach, that the 2 things were connected. My daughter wasn't waking up on her own. Someone was making her wake up. I didn't know how yet, but I knew, the way you know true things in your body before your mind can explain them, that this was not a coincidence, and it was not random, and it was not going to stop just because the police had written it down in a file. I want to tell you now about something I had never told Daniel. Something I had never told anyone. Not my mother, not my closest friend, not a therapist, no one. Because to explain what happened next, I have to go back 11 years, to a version of myself I had worked very hard to bury. When I was 22, I worked as a nanny for a family 2 towns over. The Ashworths. I loved that job. I loved their little boy, Caleb, who was 3 years old and obsessed with dump trucks and would fall asleep mid-sentence, still talking about excavators. I was there most weekdays, an extension of that household, trusted completely. One afternoon in July, I was supposed to be watching Caleb by the backyard pool while his mother ran to the pharmacy for 15 minutes. 15 minutes. I remember because I have replayed those 15 minutes more times than I have replayed any other span of time in my entire life. I was distracted. I was 22 and in the middle of a messy on-again, off-again relationship, and my phone buzzed with a text from that boyfriend, something cruel, something that made my stomach drop, and I stepped inside for what I told myself was 30 seconds to type back a reply. It was longer than 30 seconds. I know that now. I knew it then too, if I'm honest, even as I was doing it. When I came back outside, Caleb wasn't by the pool steps where I'd left him with his floaties. He was in the water, face down, silent in that specific, unbearable way that is somehow louder than screaming. I got him out. I did CPR. I'd been trained. Thank God I'd been trained. And I got him breathing again before the ambulance arrived, and by some mercy I have never stopped being grateful for. Caleb survived. He was in the hospital for 4 days. He came home eventually, and by all accounts he grew up fine. No lasting damage anyone could point to. But his mother, Vivian Ashworth, was never the same toward me. And I don't blame her. I was let go, obviously. There was no lawsuit. I think in her shock and relief that her son had lived, she didn't have it in her to pursue one. Or maybe Daniel's family lawyer, whom my own parents hired preemptively out of fear, made it clear that a civil case would be an uphill fight given that I had, after all, saved the boy's life once I returned. But Vivian said something to me on the porch the day I came to collect my things, something I have never repeated to another living soul until right now. She said, "You'll understand one day. When it's your child in that water and someone else is looking at their phone. I hope you never have to feel it. But some part of me hopes you do, just so you'll finally understand what you did to me." I moved away not long after. I changed my last name when I married Daniel, which wasn't intentional camouflage, just the ordinary way marriage works. But it had the effect of making me very hard to find if you were looking for the 22-year-old nanny from a story 11 years old and 2 towns over. I built a different life. I became, on paper, an entirely different woman. And for 11 years, I did not think about Vivian Ashworth more than a handful of times a year, usually late at night, usually with the particular ache of an old scar rather than an open wound. Until my own daughter started screaming at 2:13 in the morning, and a figure in a long coat began creeping closer to her window every single night. I didn't put it together immediately. Grief and guilt from over a decade ago don't leap instantly to the front of your mind, even when they should. It was the coat that did it, oddly. On the 11th night, the camera caught a clearer angle, just for a second, as the figure turned to leave. And I recognized, with a jolt that felt like ice water down my spine, the particular way this woman held her shoulders, hunched slightly forward on the left side. An old posture quirk from a rotator cuff injury Vivian had complained about constantly the summer I worked for her. It's strange, the details your body remembers when your mind has tried so hard to forget. I did not tell Daniel about Vivian. Not yet. I told myself I needed to be sure first, that I couldn't destroy the careful architecture of my current life. My husband's trust, my daughter's sense of a normal home, over a hunch built on a shoulder posture from 11 years ago. So instead, I did what I do best. I built a case. I went back through every frame of footage we had, cross-referencing the timestamps, the angles, the small tells. I found a partial reflection in the nursery window glass on night 6 that showed, just barely, a woman's jawline and the edge of a scar along her collarbone I remembered from summers at the Ashworth's pool. Vivian had a childhood scar from a bicycle accident that she used to joke about while applying sunscreen. I found, on a public records site, that Vivian Ashworth had moved, 6 months prior, to a rental property 11 minutes from my house. 11 minutes. Close enough to arrive on foot in the dark without a car in our driveway camera's frame, which explained why we'd never caught a vehicle. And then I found the piece that made my hands go numb. A baby monitor forum. The kind of niche online community you'd never stumble on unless you were looking. Where, 3 months earlier, a user with a familiar old email handle Vivian used to use had posted asking, quote, "If it's possible to trigger a baby monitor's white noise or a specific frequency remotely to wake an infant without the parents noticing anything on camera for research purposes." Nobody in the thread thought much of it. One person suggested she might be a sleep researcher. I sat in my kitchen at 11 at night reading that post 4 times over, and I understood, finally, completely, what had been happening in my house. Vivian wasn't standing outside my window, doing nothing. She was using some kind of directional device. I later learned, when this all came out, that it was an ultrasonic emitter, the kind sold semi-legally online for pest control, tuned to a frequency infants are especially sensitive to, one that adults in the next room typically can't consciously hear, but that will absolutely startle a sleeping baby awake. To wake my daughter every single night at 2:13 a.m. and then stand at the window afterward to watch. To watch me run in. To watch the fear on my face when I looked out and thought I saw something. She wasn't trying to hurt Nora physically. She was trying to make me feel every single night the specific terror of nearly losing your child to your own inattention. The terror I had 11 years ago, inflicted on her for real, for 15 minutes, by a pool. She wanted me to live inside that 15 minutes forever. I sat with that understanding for 2 full days before I did anything, because I was terrified, genuinely terrified, of what telling Daniel would mean, of what involving the police with my actual history would unearth, of what would happen if Vivian discovered I'd found her before I was ready. But mostly, I sat with a feeling I hadn't expected, something close to recognition, not forgiveness. I want to be honest with you. I never once thought what she was doing to my family was acceptable, and I will get to what I ultimately did about it. But recognition. I understood, in a way I hadn't let myself understand in 11 years, exactly how much I had taken from her. Not just 15 minutes by a pool, an entire decade of feeling unsafe in her own home, of a fear that apparently had metastasized into something that could plan and wait and drive 11 minutes across town at 2 in the morning, night after night, with the patience of someone who has nothing left to lose because the worst thing already happened to her once. On the 12th night, I didn't wait for 2:13. I didn't wake Daniel either. This part, I know, some of you will judge me for, and you're allowed to. But this felt like something I needed to face myself. The way you have to be the one to close a door you were the one who left open. At 1:50 a.m., I went out the back door alone with my phone recording, and I walked to the fence line, and I waited. She came at 2:09, earlier than her usual pattern, moving through the gap in our back hedge like someone who had mapped the property meticulously, which she had. When she saw me standing there in the dark, waiting for her, she stopped completely still. 11 years had changed her. She was thinner, grayer, older in the particular way grief ages a person faster than time alone ever could. But I would have known her anywhere. "You found me," she said. Not a question. "I know what you're doing to my daughter," I said. My voice shook. I let it shake. "I know why." She didn't deny it. She didn't run. She stood there in that same hunched, injured shoulder posture and said, "Do you know what it's like to watch your child's monitor every night for 11 years, waiting for something to happen to him, because the one time you trusted someone else to watch him, it almost did?" Her voice cracked on the word almost, and I understood then that Caleb surviving hadn't ended her nightmare. It had just changed its shape. I told her I was sorry. I had never said those words to her. Not properly, not once in 11 years, and I said them now, standing in my own backyard at 2 in the morning with my daughter asleep. Actually asleep, undisturbed, for the first time in 12 nights, inside the house behind me. I told her I thought about that pool more than she probably imagined. I told her that what she was doing was still wrong, that terrorizing my daughter, an innocent child who'd had nothing to do with any of it, could never even the scales for what happened to Caleb, and that I would be calling the police the moment she left my property, evidence in hand, and she needed to understand that. She didn't argue. She looked, if anything, almost relieved, like a woman who had been carrying something so heavy for so long that even the ending of it, even an ending that involved handcuffs, felt like relief. "I just wanted you to understand," she said. "For one night, just one, I wanted you to feel what those 15 minutes did to me." I called the police the moment I got back inside. Vivian didn't run, didn't resist. Officers found her still sitting on the low wall by our mailbox when they arrived 20 minutes later, waiting, as if some part of her had been waiting 11 years to finally be caught. She was charged with stalking, harassment, and unlawful surveillance. The ultrasonic device complicated things legally, in a way I won't pretend to fully understand, but it was enough, combined with the footage I had compiled, for the district attorney to move forward. She took a plea. She received supervised probation, a restraining order, and mandated psychiatric treatment rather than significant jail time, largely because of her lack of any prior record and, I suspect, because the judge understood, as I had come to understand, standing at that fence line, that this was a woman whose pain had simply never had anywhere else to go. I told Daniel everything, finally, the morning after. All of it. The Ashworths, the pool, the 15 minutes, the 11 years of silence. I watched something shift in his face as I spoke, and I braced myself for anger, for the particular kind of hurt that comes from discovering your spouse kept something this large from you. What I got instead, after a long, quiet moment, was him reaching for my hand across the kitchen table and saying, "You were 22. You made a mistake. You didn't make her do this." I don't know that I fully believe that, even now, but I have decided to let myself hold it anyway, because the alternative is drowning in it forever, and I have a daughter who needs a mother who can still get out of bed in the morning. Nora is 8 months old now. She sleeps through the night. We moved the exterior cameras to a different monitoring service, added motion sensor lighting to every corner of the yard, and I check the footage some mornings out of habit rather than fear now, which feels like its own kind of small victory. I think about Vivian sometimes, more than I probably should. I don't hate her, which surprises me most of all. I think about calling her, someday, when the restraining order lifts, not to reconcile exactly, but to tell her that I understand now, in a way I couldn't have understood at 22, what it means to love a child so completely that losing them, even for 15 minutes, even in your imagination, can reshape the entire architecture of who you are. I don't know if that's forgiveness. I don't think it needs a name. I just know that at 2:13 in the morning now, my house is quiet, and when I stand in the doorway of my daughter's room and watch her sleep, undisturbed, I understand that the debt between two women, one small mistake and one long revenge, has finally, after 11 years, been paid all the way down to zero.